Season 7 has been in a bit of a stale place, with a lot of the same heroes dominating the playing field. For supports, Baptiste and Iliari have been the most played by far, with their consistent high damage and burst healing. Sigma has also been the best tank by far for a while, even despite not receiving any buffs, and even after being nerfed earlier in the year. And one of the biggest reasons why is because of the strongest damage dealers, Bastion and Sojourn, who literally need to be met with a heavy damage mitigator like Sigma to not take over the lobby. But these heroes are just the status quo, and often limit your playstyle to just spamming corners, choke points, and the enemy tank to win. Here are the top 6 heroes to carry your games on your own. Heroes that can make plays without depending on their team or even being held back by them. Before we get started, use the link in the description below to get access to a GameLeap membership, where you can find courses and guides to help master all the heroes in this video and more. Check it out and enjoy the video. Sojourn and Bastion are awesome, we all know that. They deal a lot of damage and are respectively mobile and durable. But for the first damage dealer on the list, Mei takes a special spot with her utility, once again being useful in the current meta. It's pretty funny timing that Mei got her passive experiment, which reduced her primary fire damage while giving her a bonus slowing and burst damage effect, right as Sigma started becoming more favored, and even with Orisa still being a top pick. Orisa can shrug any slow effect off with her Fortify, so for Mei, she basically just did less damage with her Ice Spray with no real payoff. But right now, Mei is one of the only damage dealers with really high level utility. Other top damage dealers are mostly limited to abilities that just deal more damage, give them ability, or just keep themselves alive. They're pretty selfish, but as a main damage dealer, you often have to focus on just doing your own job as much as you can, and a lot of compositions play around that. But for Mei, the Ice Wall is sticking along for long enough now that consistent good usage is amazing for dominating your opponents and locking them out of a lot of teamfights. Her damage is decent and also pretty good sometimes, and gives her some niche advantages in certain duels, like with Genji and Tracer, and just her spray alone is enough to make her a top pick into the most played tanks. Sigma and even D.Va struggle to handle an aggressive Mei push. You won't be able to just run in at the start of the fight, wall off the tank and start freezing, but with good timing and pre-fight poke you can easily get a massive advantage with a little patience. Next up for tanks, although he's gotten a recent nerf, Doomfist is still one of the most self-sustainable tanks, with a really easy way to make a massive play on his own, literally implemented in his kit through his empowered rocket punch. Doom isn't only good because he can charge up this super powerful ability, and in all honesty for the time it takes to charge, it's not great. Its availability also largely depends on the enemy team composition, but when he does get the punch off, it's just the type of ability that can make your opponents want to rage quit. And the great thing is that Doomfist doesn't need to rely on getting powered punches to win, but has a really decent kit outside of it. But the thing to focus on is playmaking. Who are the best heroes for just solo bolo taking the game by force? And for Doomfist, just his normal punch and dueling abilities are perfect, along with his fast charging ultimate that is perfect for committing hard on key targets. Doomfist has all the damaging abilities and the stuns and knockback to both straight up assassinate backline, but also disrupt them if they're too difficult to commit on. Sometimes supports are pretty bulky, and punching both supports backwards while their tank is trying to push is an amazing advantage, and you don't always have to get kills with your plays. And on top of all that, he's got the mobility to set himself up in these advantageous positions, and escape them if they go south. That flexibility rounds out his kit to help give you more agency in your games, since playing Sigma or Orisa just doesn't give you the extra access to backline kills that Doomfist does so well. And speaking of the backline, although there are some supports that are really focused on being hard to kill and just live forever, when you're playing against teams that will just explode your tank and save you for last, you're not going to get much value out of staying alive longer when your team just dies in front of you. That's where the explosive ability of Ana's Biotic Nade comes through, which is remarkably still strong despite the cooldown nerf. It's a bit rough that Ana's value is mostly based off of her one ability, but the other thing that helps her make proactive moves is her damage. Ana's range and consistent damage is pretty underutilized by most players, with a lot of ranged fights going on, as Ana just hitting a small off angle like the Circuit Royale flank room on first point can net you free shots on the backline, and all damage on supports is damage they have to spend healing each other instead of their team, or even dealing damage themselves. It also prevents them from pushing too aggressive, because at half health or less in the front line, you can easily get downed by random spam. Ana will always be a great pick unless she gets massively nerfed, so make sure to use her abilities to the fullest, with aggressive nades and angles to deal good damage for the moments when your team doesn't need 2000 CCs of full blast healing pocket for the front line. For another hero that's got a nerf but still has high carry potential, Symmetra is still a solid pick despite losing 25 shield health. It's a really big change, and it definitely makes sense why they did it. But the important things that her damage output and teleporter utility are still amazing for your own playstyle. Symmetra is more common in pro play for setting up teleporter plays and then using her close range damage to follow through with the rest of her rush team. But without the extra health, it's a bit scarier to run in with your entire team. Sim still has amazing control for a DPS, with the aforementioned teleporter allowing her to seriously outplay a lot of mid-fight duels. It is almost impossible to fight a Sim who knows how to use her teleporter. You have to predict her teleporter movements, and even then she can just shoot you from range, forcing you to break the teleporter, wasting a lot of your time and damage, or stay near it to mark the Sim from pushing back closer for more greedy plays. It's really tough to deal with. And her turrets are also great for splitting enemy attention. She has a lot of options when it comes to both objective play and duels. Most people know how annoying Symmetra can be, but not how it is to play her, and the truth is that she's actually a simple hero with a confusing outside. She actually still has a super high skill ceiling, so make sure to use your teleporter often, and although it's definitely the most minor part of her abilities, getting the hang of setting up your turrets on key spots will help you defend objectives, split attention, and also get a nice extra bit of ult charge coming in on top of the secondary fire rockets you can fire out every second. Sometimes you'll be playing into one-sided compositions that either go in super fast or force you to make a play by setting up on or near the objective and defending. The good thing about Sim is that she's a rare hero that has both the option to go for the backline with an aggressive teleporter play and the firepower to melt versatile tanks. Use that mobility to your advantage to avoid relying only on your team to be strong comps, and you can make a massive difference in your own input in the game. The second tank goes to Zarya, who despite not being able to gun straight for the backline, is one of the only heroes that can bully Sigma out of the front line. Zarya's beam damage takes time to ramp up, but if you're committed to the hero, it's easy to get past that initial hurdle. The skill ceiling in managing your bubbles is super high, and it only gets easier when you play with more aggressive teammates. But luckily, Zarya doesn't actually need them to get value, since bubbling yourself or even big damage dealers like Bastion or Mei and the occasional peeling bubble for your supports will get you more than enough energy. The problem with playing Zarya is the same as other tanks without near infinite mitigation abilities or a massive shield that can soak damage for more than 2 seconds. But with Zarya, you can at least play range and cover to stay safe even if your opponents are looking to focus you down. The game is at a point where just destroying Zarya's bubbles and just gunning for the target, whether it's Zarya or an ally, is a really valid strategy. But as long as you're aware of it, you can easily keep yourself alive. But as for the Reaper that just teleported into 5 enemies, maybe you'll have to let him know first that 450 health with that big of a hitbox isn't actually very good in the middle of an enemy team. Sometimes it might just be worth letting him die to save the bubble. But keeping yourself alive is definitely a priority, since Zarya is insane at focus firing and her beam range isn't too shabby either. Just like other frontline tanks, when you can, shoot past the other tank to deal more impactful damage on the rest of their team, on enemies that don't have whale-sized health pools. Zarya's raw beam damage output is amazing for focusing people down, and although you got to stay your distance a lot of the time, when you do eventually show up to the front line with 2 bubbles and high energy, you can dominate the team fight. Just make sure to abuse high grounds as much as you can, since although Zarya seems like a low ground brawl hero, she benefits a lot from high ground angles. Her aggressive tempo is all about her primary and secondary fire damage, compared to other tanks that weave in damaging and utility abilities to get picks, so getting that higher position is always a plus. And finally, for the last hero on the list, one of the best heroes overall for clutching on your own, Kiriko has got everything she needs to carry unfettered by her teammates. Before getting into her kit, even the fact that Roadhog is now a more viable pick means that Protective Suzu is now pretty crazy for completely switching the momentum that happens when a biotic nade hits your hog. But even that play is just a more defensive reaction to aggressive tempo. For more confidently aggressive plays, the best way to play Kiriko is to get yourself onto the enemy backline, either through off angles or jumping in with your team. Without relying on not only your team playing dive heroes, but also playing them well enough to coordinate dives, you can still start on flanks, or climb up to a position in the middle of a fight to go for a duel. Kiriko is so spontaneous and has a lot of immediately accessible damage and mobility through her extra headshot bonus and wall climb, so don't shy away from 1v1s whenever you can. And for the final piece of her kit, one of the biggest ways to carry on your own is by using your ultimate properly. And the first step to using an ultimate properly is by having a good one in the first place. Kiriko's Kitsune Rush is a top tier ultimate, even for a support ult that has to compete with Nano Boost and Amplification Matrix. Using it right doesn't take much practice at all, and is really just timing and positioning. Use the ultimate when the enemy team is committed, by using movement or defensive abilities that you can take advantage of. Or you can force them to commit by placing your ultimate in a path that allows you to easily chase the enemy team. You can even get really wacky and just throw it into their backline for your own solo play. Just know that your ultimate is so much stronger than most in the game, so using it for the right teamfight is important. Even if you manage to easily win a fight, if it was just after your opponent's captured a checkpoint, it's not going to make much of a difference relatively to the map as a whole. Although that doesn't mean you have to be super tentative about using it. Remember that winning a fight, no matter which one it is always better than losing a fight. With all that at your disposal, only your creativity and mechanics will hold you back, so make sure to get some practice in with the kunais and you'll be ready to dominate your matches. That's it for the top heroes to carry with right now, outside of the meta mainstays, and no matter how bad your team can be. Just make sure to keep focusing on what you can do to win the game, and not so much on how badly your teammates are playing. It's a mindset that holds you back, so keep moving forward, and I'll see you next time.